You've been one of our lovely loose men. Also, you've been on the show, you know, many times over the years. So we've got to know you away from the sort of Judge Rinder.
A little bit.
It's not a persona, but the Judge Rinder thing, if you like.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to step forward and take part in our...
Well, first, I'd say I was really nervous about this. You know, I think, generally speaking, the thing I care about is I see a lot of young men in my court who are not emotionally articulate. And the consequences, we know, are real. And we know that, for example, the biggest killer of young men is depression. And part of that, not entirely, but part of that is their sense of self-esteem.
Yeah.
And there are things that men say to each other that women would never say in public. They'd certainly put it on Twitter. But, you know, they rib each other about weight. I was speaking to Freddie Flintoff.
Yeah.
And, of course, what we don't talk about is the emotional impact and the consequences that can have. And they're very real. And one of the things I found when I was in my late 20s, I put on a lot of weight. And, you know, people would say things, and inevitably you internalise it, but you don't necessarily have the immediate community around you to express that. What you're asked to do, invited to do, expected to do as a man is simply to laugh it off.
Yeah.
But it can be incredibly affecting.
It's like death by paper cuts, I think. All those little tiny comments, they might not draw a lot of blood, but eventually it wounds deeply enough.
Do you think that gay men are more critical of each other?
I think it's quite a complicated question. I think it's true across the board that what has changed, whether it's gay men or straight men, is the kind of paradigms of beauty in the media.
Yes.
And so straight men these days are just as affected by body image as gay men are.
Yeah.
When I was young, I used to watch, you know, these sporting pundits. I used to look like Saint and Greavesy.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it was the beer and the beer belly, and that was expected.
Yeah.
And these days, they look like, well, the rather beautiful Robbie Savage. Footballers are more mindful about their image. You know, they look like David Beckham.
Do you think, Rob, that an image of men has been built up that you can only fail to achieve? And I look at all these men's health magazines and these pictures of men on the cover with all their perfectly formed middle bits.
It's true of men, it's just as true of women. You know, the perfect paradigm is not true. And, of course, what's really interesting is when you meet people that have these perfect bodies, you ask them to identify their perfect part, and they can't.
They can't.
Because just like all of us, just like, you know, you think of your exam, you walk out of your exam, the only thing you remember is what you didn't write. There's never a moment where you look and think, God, isn't that marvellous?
Well,
unless you're sort of deeply
When we did it, Rob, we all had our various different parts of our bodies that we felt the most self-conscious for. For me, it was scars. I don't know what it was for you.
Well, it was just the fact to take my clothes off, because culturally you're not supposed to.
In the first place.
Yeah.
Was there one particular thing, or were you doing it just to show, do you know what, I did feel self-conscious about myself, but now I'm feeling proud of myself?
I wanted to engender discussion, and yeah, I did want to talk about that, but also for me, it's also a little bit about what exercise gives me. I don't watch myself really on television. When I listen to the sound of my own voice, I'm not sure if this happens to you, Janet, I don't know. You just think you sound completely different. Yeah. And, of course, when you see... I never look at photographs of myself, really, ever.
Well, look at yourself now.
Look at yourself now.
Photograph.
Yes.
When you see that image, because I remember when we were in the studio, I was really nervous.
Yeah.
How did you feel knowing you were up against other men? How did it make you feel?
Well, I want to say, genuinely speaking, I didn't feel at all competitive in any way. I really do. You know, I think one of the best things that ever happened to me, I met this incredible older person who was a judge, and she said to me, you know, you're like the type of person that's terribly worried about what other people think. You know, the only thing that matters is really what you think of them. And it's the best advice that I ever got. And the good news for me is that in my late 20s is that I realised that why I decided to exercise was because it helped my mental health.
Yeah.
The endorphin rush afterwards, the sense of control, etc. And so, you know, the fact that there ended up being... it used to be a six-pack, it's gone down to 2 or 3. Is just a happy, you know, coincidence. But what is interesting is a number of my friends who are in their early 40s who have had babies, I suppose, these days, in the great human chronology, a bit late.
Yeah.
And so whereas they used to exercise, they stopped for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And you can really tell how much it affects them when they start putting on weight.
Yeah.
And the difference is they're in groups of guys that will rib each other rather than be supportive. And as I say, there are certain taboos that you just don't say amongst women. I hope one, you know, you'd never think of calling a friend of yours who just had a baby fat. It's a de facto hate crime.
Yeah.
Blokes who have been, you know, on paternity and haven't had the time or the energy, the capacity, certainly we hope if they're involved fathers to go to the gym, feel exactly that dearth of low self-esteem. They're just expected to put up with it. So I wanted this to be part of celebrating who you are, whatever you look like, you are fabulous. And, of course, what we definitely know is beauty comes from confidence and from within.
It does. We couldn't have put it better.